Good afternoon. I think you're going to be more people listening today because it is raw outside. Happy summer, happy second day of summer, happy second day of rain and cool temperatures. But I'm grateful because finally the garden looks like a garden. Finally, just overnight with an entire day of rain, the flowers are just, I wish I could scan out there and show you. The flowers are just like bam, bing, bing, bing. They've come to life. And that is what good water, good fluids, and lots of sunshine does after a dry spell. So it's the same thing with the human body when it's not looking well, when it looks a little deflated, when it's not feeling that great. What we need to do is just purge our system with some water. I have a great... Do I want to bend down and pick this up? I'm going to bend down and pick this up for you. This is a really good seeded watermelon. I know it's going to be sweet because the bottom is flat and yellow. That means that it sat in the field after it was ready, and so it's nice and ripe and it's going to be sweet. So I had to dig to the bottom of the barrel at the commissary the other day to find this, because most of the watermelons that were on the top, 3/4 of them were completely like this all the way around, which means that they were picked before they had it disturbed on. But we're going to get through this because we're going to show you something very quick today. So the caption says, "Are you a good student?" Are you a good student? What makes a good student? Am I a good teacher? What makes a good teacher? Well, this passage that we're in, and we are inching, we are so close to chapter 5. We are almost out of chapter 4. Mark 4:33 and 34. Jesus' use of parables. And the scripture says, "And with many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable he did not speak to them. And when they were alone, he explained all the things to his disciples." He spoke in parables so that they could hear him. And if he did not speak in parables, he did not speak to them. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, you may want to scan back through the last 4 or 5 videos, because for the entire chapter 4 in the Gospel of Mark, we've been talking about parables. Well, Jesus has been giving parables, but we took a couple of weeks ahead of that to just talk about why Jesus uses parables and the use of parables. And we have come to the conclusion that he used the parables because he wanted to get the attention of the people, keep the attention of the people, and most importantly, encourage them to think for themselves, to get them to think on their own and to implement that thing that he was trying to get them to understand in their lifestyle. So this is kind of dear to my heart, these two verses today, because we're talking about the wise teacher and the wise scholar. The wise teacher and the wise scholar. We're talking about the instructor and the person that's being instructed. We're talking about the fact that I've been coming to you for the last year and a half every other Thursday, and we have been instructing you in the Word of God, and we've been instructing you in how to transform your physical being. We are concerned about your spiritual health, but we're also concerned about your physical health. And so, are you a good student? A good student would have by now, so we have an entire year and 6 months. That would be, put my engineering background back on. So that's 18 months. That's every other week. That would be 23. Now we're up to 11. So you have at least 35 recipes on good food that will help transform you, because we're talking, biblically speaking, transformation of the mind. Everything starts with the transformation of the mind. So the transformation of the body starts with eating things that are better for you, things that are going to, in fact, transform your body. We've done some simple recipes. Most of them have been relatively simple, but some have been super simple. Some have been just simple. There's been something for everybody. There's been some sweet stuff. There's been some not so sweet stuff. There's been a lot of vegetables. There's been a lot of raw food, mostly raw food. Have you done anything? Am I missing something? Am I not instructing in a manner that you understand? Am I not being kind to you and helping you transform from wherever you are to where you should be? Am I not being patient with you as we cut up a watermelon at least 4 times? We've done the basic salad at least 10 times. So all of these things that I've tried to do are basically what Jesus describes as a wise teacher. And the student that has taken the information that I've given you and at least tried to apply it to their lives would be considered the wise scholar. So where do you fall in? Where do I fall in? You can rate me right there in the chat box. You can tell me whether or not you think I'm a wise instructor or not, after I explain to you what characterizes a wise instructor. Jesus' use of parables, and with many such parables, he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear. Are you able to hear? What does that mean? You have ears on your head, so obviously you can hear. Maybe deaf, but most of you have ears. You can hear me. So can you hear me? Have you heard what I've been saying for the last year and a half? But without a parable, he wouldn't speak to them. So I think I've been pretty good at every time I brought the word to you or the teaching, the cooking piece, I've tried to do it in a way that you understood it. I tried to use earthly examples of things that you can relate to help bring this heavenly message to you in a simplistic manner. And so this is what this is talking about. It's saying the use of parables. It's squeezing right in here between the last parable that Jesus is going to talk about, which is a really fun parable about the wind and the waves obeying him, and between the last parable of the mustard seed. What are you growing? Because regardless of your actual input, God has already planned for things the way that they're going to be. And so it'd be nice if we participate and we do our part of the task, but it's going to take place anyway. And so in between there, he talks about a wise scholar and a wise teacher. And so the teacher, and this is something to think about too. You can rate me in the box, but while you're rating me, I want you to think about where you're getting your instruction in life, whether it's your spiritual instruction, your professional instruction, your relationships instruction. Where are you? Who's teaching you? Who's your mentor? Who's giving you instruction in life? And one thing that's important to bear in mind when you're rating your instructor are these characteristics. And the characteristics are the ones that Jesus has. And so the very first thing that we know about Jesus is that nothing ever was self-display. It was never about Jesus. You know, so sometimes when you hear folks on Sunday preaching, sometimes when you hear your employer doing things, how many times do they use the word I versus we? Because when you're a good instructor, that superiority is not supposed to be identifiable, so to speak. That self-display of who you are and what you've done. Sometimes in some of the examples, in order to give that earthly picture to someone, yes. But if that is all about I, that's never going to help the student, because who was it? Plato that said, no one ever really teaches anyone anything. You know, the teacher basically just helps the student recall what he already has somewhere in his mind. Because most times when we are in an episode of teaching, me for instance, with my tennis coach, you know, it's not really telling me anything I don't already know. He's just basically bringing back to mind what he's already taught me for the most part. And that's with anything. If you stop and pause for a minute, it may be funny because it's hilarious when you really think about it. As we grow and learn, we're basically just going through stuff that we already know, but for whatever reasons, we have to be reminded of it and reminded how to put it into a particular context or situation or whatever it's supposed to be applicable to. And so that's the thing. And so we're on this journey together. We're learning together. I'm learning things all the time. I especially learn how various things work with people at various stages in their life. You know, I've worked with enough people to know that, you know what, they're not just ready for that just yet. But maybe they can do the raw salad and have a piece of their favorite sourdough bread until they get to a point where they can do a piece of raw carrot bread. So it's a thing of us going on the journey together. And that should be very self-evident when you're listening to an instructor. You know, the fact that they're not elevating themselves, you know, but they're right here with you. They're just the person that's leading the conversation for the most part. And in that also thing of not having that superiority, that's easily determined by the individual whose teaching's level of understanding of you are where you are and taking people exactly where they are. I tell people, you know, depending on whether or not you have a good juicer or a good blender or this or that, you're going to have to chop up whatever. And so it's understanding that not everybody has the ability to catch on to something. You know, like I keep going back to the tennis examples when they're like, you know, you got to brush up on the ball. What does that mean to a layperson? You don't know what brushing up on a ball means from just smacking a ball. And so unless that instructor has the ability to be able to take you where you are, to understand that you have no understanding of what brushing up on a ball means, and be able to take something that you do have an understanding of and say, you know what, that would be like, when I say brushing up on the ball, it's like when you take an apple, everybody's had an apple, most people have eaten an apple, and you take your tongue or something, you know, so it's about, you know, I can't probably identify with that one as well. When I was instructing as a fitness instructor, and we used to have dozens of people that would come to our boot camp outdoors, 5 o'clock in the morning, and all types of weather, you know, year round, and they would stay, and they would keep coming back, and they would keep telling their friends. Almost never advertised the class, and we never had less than 25 people in here. 5 days a week, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. And one of the things I used to do is I used to say, because, you know, the fundamentals of getting fit is, you know, making sure your legs are strong, and we did hundreds of thousands of squats. And so it was important that people had the foundational principles of squats. So I could easily say, what you want to do is you want to go down and come back up. And that's what most instructors do. And that's why people get injured. And so I would always tell people, you know, when you're doing the squat, you want to imagine that you have a book on your head, imaginary book. You don't want that book to fall. You don't want it to go forward or backwards. And then you want to imagine that you have to go to the bathroom, but you can't quite get to the bathroom yet. So it's like squeezing just that pelvic type of area. And then you want to, and I tell them exactly how to open up your feet a little further than shoulder width apart. You want to have your body weight on the heels of your feet. So slightly curl your toes up just so that you don't balance yourself or go forward. And then you want to imagine there's a chair behind you, and you want to sit on that chair with the bottom of your glutes first. So let's all do this together. Let's imagine we have that book on our head. We're going to hold our arms straight out in front of us, and we're going to squeeze our glutes, but at the same time, we're going to press our inner thighs out, and then we're going to sit back like, you know, that's taking any person that has anything between their ears can follow that method just by walking them through every single second of it. And I don't have to worry about if they're going to do a correct squat because they have everything that they need to have. I'm not taking anything for granted. We're working with some peppers today. And so I'm not taking anything for granted. There's nothing, almost the level of understanding that a wise instructor has to have is that that person has nothing between their ears, and you have to put it all there for them and just take them step by elementary, inch by inch. And they're going to get it. And people would always say that. And I always had perfect students, and I was always so proud that we never had injuries. And we would have people that have never done anything athletic, physical in their life. So that's that good instructor. The good instructor has an understanding that not only that they make it that perfect squat because you walk them through it that first time, but then immediately on the second squat, they may have forgotten something that you said 2 seconds ago, so you're bop, 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 walking them right back through it again. not assuming that they have the ability to remember from 2 seconds ago. That's the understanding piece, and you'll pick up on that. I've been in classes where I've had excellent instructors. I've been in classes where I'm like, you should not be teaching. So that's the thing. So it doesn't matter how complicated the subject matter is. It depends on the level of understanding that the instructor has. And right there with the level of understanding goes their level to be able to be compassionate. Jesus was, he said, looked upon the people and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And that's the same thing. There has to be something inside of you that just wants to help people, that wants to, that you feel bad that they can't get it. Today I was at the tennis camp with the veterans. Some of them are handicapped. They want to be there. They want to, do that swinging. This is a tennis center. And you see them, and the lady, one of my, just keep going at that ball like that. And I'm saying, hey, just back up and let that ball fall somewhere around here at your hip level, and then swing at it. So if it's coming and it's here, you have to step back until it drops just a little, and then you can comfortably, and just with that little bit of information, the next 2 or 3 shots, she was banging it. And so that's good. So that's the level of compassion that also goes with a level of patience. Because you can explain, like I said a minute ago, and they still may not get it, depending on who they are and what's going on. And then it's the ability to just say, nice try. I see, it's better than it was the last time. So that's the patience, that's the compassion, along with the understanding. But that's basically the most elements. And then, it's interesting because also in those characteristics, so you have compassion, you have understanding, you have patience. What else is wrapped in there? I mean, it's almost like they're the same, but they really aren't. But kindness also with an instructor. You're going to be teaching people, helping people transition, helping people transform their lives. There's a level of kindness that has to go along with that. And you find all of those in Jesus. Just when you read how he dealt with his disciples, who we all love to call them the motley crew. So he obviously exercised a ton of patience and kindness. And so those are the things that make a good instructor. But very close on those heels, we're going to talk about the good scholar. We're going to talk about the student. We're going to talk about why people aren't transformed. You come and you listen to a sermon Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. You listen to me every other week, but you listen to your pastor, sometimes twice on Sundays. Some people go to both services and then they come to a midweek service. How many sermons do you have to have before there's some level of transformation there? How many times do you have to do anything before there's some level of difference? Well, it depends on what type of student you are. So we want to be wise students. And so wise students have 2 main characteristics. The first characteristic is do not forget what you've been taught, And how do we not forget what we've been taught? The first thing that we have to do is, upon leaving the teaching environment, wherever it is, even if you're listening to me, maybe you've got a little pen and paper right there beside you. Now, this is where we get in trouble with digital. Because as long as we're doing things and we see things, I often come places, even in church sometimes, you've got your King James Version or your Bible app, and so you're just reading. So where are you putting your notes? Where are the things applicable to what's happening at that point? So one thing I say about, in order to remember things, how many times are you going to pull out your phone and go through those church notes or those Ask Dr. Dallas notes on your phone that you jotted down in your note thing? Almost never. I can attest to that. I have a gazillion notes in my note app. And I almost never look through there unless I'm looking for something, usually a phone number or something that I wrote down under someone's name. And so it's important to not forget the information that you've learned. And so I would say to you, after your session with Ask Dr. Dallas on Facebook Live, or if you're on our YouTube channel, which I wish you guys would go subscribe to Ask Dr. Dallas, then you can write down some of the highlights, those things that I said 2 or 3 times or that you remember, or go back and look at the video, review it, pause, hit the button, jot down those things that are important, and then put them onto something. that's easily accessible to you for that week. So with me, every morning I'm doing my Bible study, I'm doing devotional readings, I'm trying to read a couple of spiritual books. And so those things are important. I actually put them in my notes on my note app, but before that day is over, I will extract those and put them in my little journal for the week. And then I go through that on a daily basis, just so that at the end of the week, usually what I'm studying and what I'm doing kind of coincides with everything. So I'm pulling all these things together. However you do your summary thing, but you have to have something in place so that you're able to go back and regurgitate the information so that you are able to remember it, so that you won't forget it. And that takes memorization. A lot of times I will walk on the treadmill initially, and then I'll walk outdoors a little later, and when I'm walking outdoors, I don't have any phones or cell phones or distractions, but I'm just kind of memorizing, meditating on that information that I went through that morning. And then it becomes like second nature, and that's a really good thing. So you can, when you see it again, or when you see something else, you can relate to that. So that's a really good student. The good student is the student that says, I have this information, now what am I going to do with it? Because nothing is forever. Everything has to be reconfirmed. Those things that we believe as believers, those things that we know to be the truth, we know that, but it's not a once in a lifetime thing. It's something that you reconfirm to yourself and to your mind and to your heart and your spirit, daily, weekly, at least daily and weekly, but several times throughout the day. And the more you do that, the more faith and belief that you have in those things that you believe and understand, because you just said it so much. But then here's the other piece. And this is what ties in with this passage, because it says here, and when they were alone, he explained all things to the disciples. So here's the other piece about, this ties in with being a wise instructor. So who is your wise instructor? Who is your wise teacher? Who's your wise mentor? Whoever they are, it's not so much just the message that they're bringing, but it's the message, how it's encapsulated with who that person is. And that, in other words, would be, are you walking the talk? Because we get a lot of instructors, and I've never understood people that have these fitness trainers that look like they're 9 months pregnant and they have a ton of clients, and it's always like they don't have time to work out. I'm like, seriously? And are you paying him? And so that thing that you're learning ought to always be something that is transformative, in your lifestyle, your mind, whatever. And if that's the case, then there ought to be an example of what that transformation looks like at the end point. And typically, if the person that is instructing you on how to transform, then they ought to be very similar to what that end point is. Does that make sense in a little convoluted way? Yeah. And so, in this, the disciples had the wise teacher of Jesus Christ, because they were trying to learn the things that were between his ears. Why? Teach us how to pray like you, is what they said. They were praying all along, but their prayers weren't having the power as the prayers that were displayed by Jesus. And they were trying to learn this, so they're going to this instructor so that they could be like the instructor ultimately. And that is the person that's teaching them. That's important. I remember Pastor Street used to say, that's just like saying we saw some grease just dripping down Dr. Dallas's mouth. If I ever see her eating a hamburger, I can eat a hamburger if I want to eat a hamburger. But the thing is that you establish this character about yourself and who you are that ought to be that thing. If I'm teaching people and trying to transform them from eating meat to not eating meat, then the end product shouldn't be me eating meat. I guess that makes sense. But then here's the key. So the key is that the disciples were able to have a conversation when they were alone with Jesus. He went back to explain the parables. How is it that they were alone with him? Because not only are they trying to obtain the character of who Jesus is in their transformation from listening to him. But if we are good students, then we are always going to be following that which we want to be like. So they were looking for the company of that which they hoped to be transformed into. The company of Jesus. That's why they were there and able to get further instruction on what the parables meant, because they were seeking the company and the presence of he whom could transform them and teach them the ultimate transformation. And so that's applicable today, all these thousands of years later, because you and I too want the same thing, and we ought to be seeking the company of Jesus. Are you seeking the company of Jesus? Are you seeking to be in his presence? And what does that look like? That looks like trying not to forget his teachings in the Bible. And if we are paying attention to his teachings, then we know how easy it is to seek his presence. A lot of people know that there is a living Christ, that the Holy Spirit lives inside of us. But do they have a relationship with him? Have they sought his presence? Have they sought time to be alone with him? Some people, even in their Bible study and their devotional morning time, you know, they've got one eye on the phone, one eye on Facebook, one finger over here, and you just, we're like the power strip that I tell people. You have a power strip, has 8 outlets in it. You know, if I'm using 2 of those outlets, then I'm not getting the full power from either one. You know, it's all divided. So you have 8 outlets, then you get 1/8 of the power, 1/8 of the power, 1/8 of the power. And at the end of the day, if they're all plugged in, you're not just getting as much juice as just having one thing plugged into the one power strip. And so distractions are killing us, they're killing us, they're killing us, they're taking away quality development. You know, we live in a world, the Bible often teaches us that we're in this world, but we're not of this world. People often say, well, what does that mean? It just means that if you're ever with the majority, chances are you're against the will of God, you know. And then the things that the world are attracted to typically are not the things that we ought to be attracted to. Their goals and ideologies of what makes people successful, what makes people happy, they're different from what we believe. You know, our whole thing is to wake up and who can we bless today? What can I do for my fellow man today? You know, what can I do that's pleasing to God? Not necessarily what do I feel like doing. And so that's the key too. And so when we say that we are in this world, but we're not of the world, what does that look like for you? And so it's going to be different. So we have to start doing things differently, and we have to minimize the amount of time that we allow so many worldly distractions to come in, because all they're going to do is divide your time and your allegiance, so to speak. So that's that. And so continuing on being a wise student, by now, if you have not already started just kind of clipping a picture, you can clip a picture while you're on Facebook. You can just do a screenshot to see what the ingredients are. I should admit, I have to be so careful with these little cheap plastic new things that are out. So this is the KitchenAid, the Cuisinart that I had recently bought. Just broke all up. It's just a mess. So this is, I didn't unpack this. I mean, when you clean it, it's made so that you can just leave everything in there to make it easy to store. So what we're going to basically be doing is we have one piece of equipment. This is so fantastic what you are learning. Have you stopped for a minute to think about what you're learning? We're learning how to prepare dishes where it only requires one little piece of plastic machinery that you can easily rinse out once we're done. It takes 2 seconds to wash this out with soap. And then we have this stuff that you rinse out. And it's so easy. It's so easy. If I weren't going to be talking to you about how important the various ingredients are and what they mean and what they can do to the body, this would take 10 minutes to make. I'm going to have some this evening. I want to show you something in a minute. So here we have sprouted chickpeas. So we talked about a wise teacher and wise instruction. So here's the wise meal. Uh-oh. I've got to pick up my CSA back today by 5 o'clock. So we're getting ready to Zoom. So this is the wisdom of raw food. So these are chickpeas, and they've been sprouted. How do you know a sprouted chickpea? See how I'm hanging onto the chickpea without holding the chickpea? Because I'm holding on to the sprout of the chickpea. Now, these are a little unbalanced because some of them have sprouts that are, almost an inch long, and some of them have sprouts that are about a 1/4 inch long. And that's because the ones that were sitting on the bottom, while I was straining it, took so long. Okay, so how do we do that? We had regular chickpeas, which I don't have any around me. So what we do is we take regular chickpeas that you buy from the bulk section at the health food store, or you might buy a bag of chickpeas, but not out of the can, obviously. So I want to go with a raw chickpea. You put it into a bowl of water. You probably want to have a 1-to-6 ratio. 1 cup of peas to 6 cups of water. And you just let them soak, typically overnight. The next morning you get up, it's really not that complicated. You strain the water, and then you take a larger bowl, put your chickpeas in there, and fill it with water again, and just swirl your hand around in it. Strain it, put it into a strainer, and let it sit for the day. Then before you go to bed at night, you're going to do the same thing. Pour the chickpeas in a big bowl, a larger bowl. Pour some water in it, swirl it around with your finger, strain it, leave it in the strainer. Do the same thing when you wake up in the morning until you start to grow the thing. Now that's going to be dependent on what time of year. I don't use air conditioning, so here I just strained these the other day. Soaked them the other day. Typically it takes 3 to 5 days to soak chickpeas, garbanzo beans, whatever you want to call them. But in the summertime they'll sprout in a day, depending on how warm the environment is. So we have chickpeas. This might be 3 good cups of sprouted chickpeas. That's what you call a sprouted chickpea, because now it has a sprout on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get those nice and soft and mushy first, and then we're going to put our ingredients in. What are we making? We're making raw hummus. Most of you have had hummus, yes, but when you usually get hummus, it's hummus that has been prepared from cooked beans, which means that they're okay, but anytime you're cooking your vegetables, you're losing a lot of the nutritional value. However, when we're preparing raw chickpeas, especially sprouted chickpeas, we have increased. So if you look at the ingredients for the nutritional ingredients for chickpeas, you'll find that they're pretty high in protein, maybe 4 or 5 grams. I don't even have a clue. I don't remember right now. However, when I sprout them, that value almost doubles and then sometimes triples. So that's what you really, so people often ask me, about my muscular statue and how I maintain so much muscle still with not eating meat products for 30 years now. And that's from, I try to have sprouted chickpeas a couple of times a week. And so we're going to make a hummus, which makes it really easy to get your raw food in, because you can just take any raw vegetable, celery, chopped zucchini, and just dip it in like potato chips and dip, and it's just fabulous. Then also you can just take a handful of the sprouted chickpeas and throw them onto your salad, and it's going to give it a nice kind of meaty texture, and it's really good, and it's going to be so good for you. For people that are trying to get muscular, men that are trying to get strong, it's nothing better than raw chickpeas. And you can do, what else do we do with chickpeas? We usually make the raw hummus. You can make bread. You can do all kinds of things. So it starts out like this. You take your raw chickpeas and you put them into the blender, and you just, the food processor, and you just kind of want to get it going because they're a little hard. Where's that little toppy thing? So I'm going to show you a couple of tricks here, just so that you're not frustrated and you see how easy the dish really is. Where's the other piece of my Here we are. Blah, blah, blah. So we just... So you'll see, I guess you can see from there, that they've just kind of gotten a little bit of texturized. So just want to run that again. have as much juice as my other food processor. That's why I'm like, okay, what is happening here? And so that's what we're going to do. I think I'm going to use some more. You always kind of want to just, you know, the more you do it, you'll kind of get used to it, and you'll know where you ought to be, how much is too much, so that you're not measuring out a lot of things. I usually try to use the same size containers so that I know what the ratios of liquid to bean should be. Okay. So the reason that we did that is because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 ingredients here. It's really simple. When you're making hummus, you'll have different people that will use different things. They'll say you have to have this and you have to have this in your hummus. Here's the key. Anybody that's making hummus, you've got to have sprouted chickpeas, you've got to have raw tahini, and you've got to have an oil. Beyond that, you can use a little bit. We're going to use a little tamari, or you can use regular sea salt or some other type of acid. We're going to use lemon juice. Some people won't use lemon juice in addition to the tamari. We're going to use olive oil. We're going to use raw garlic. And so if I were to dump all of these in here now, we would be like churning forever, especially with this little slowy thing. So what you want to do when you're preparing things is you want to take that main ingredient and just kind of get it going. And so now it's down to more of a texture, and now we're going to start adding liquid to it. The things like the cilantro and the garlic, things like that, you can add at the end because it's just going to blend in, and they're more coarse chopped. What you want to do is get it to a point where it's soft and it's workable, and then things like the cilantro will just blend in. So we're starting with the peas now. Now we're going to put our real ingredients in. And so what we want to do is we still want to get it workable, what I call workable. I've also put these chili peppers in here. So I've soaked them because these are hot as kuta kente. So you put them in here and you'll be, you know how you have meals where you're like, it's just, you don't want to be uncomfortable eating your food. But if you just learn to soak, what is this? This is a, I forget the Beamer hot name for it. So we're taking it, we have to add water to the chickpeas. So you put a couple of peppers in there, nice little trick, just to give it some heat, but not as much heat as you want, babe. Some people love, you know, like that crazy, me making a mess. Some people love that crazy amount of heat. If you like that, that's what you want to do, fine. So now, see how it's happening, it's getting smooth already. Now, after you've been doing raw, wet for a while, you'll know that you want that to be a little more creamy before you start adding the other things, because chickpeas can be a little dicey. So we're going to add a little more water because I probably used all of the beans that I had, which was too much. So I don't want to make another mess. I'm going to take the top off. And then you start playing with the sides because you know that the top piece is a little stiffer than the bottom because this is not a great food processor. But actually this is a good, I've been playing with this. And so that blade is on the bottom where you typically have it. It has the ability to put this little thing up, and so that the blade, the real blade, this is the plastic blade, will sit up. And then that way you won't have stuff getting stuck at the bottom. So for people that are trying to take rind meat and stuff, this would work better if you had the blend thing, the actual blade halfway up. But I didn't, so we're going to work with it. We're going to add a little more water, like twice as much, because I added twice as much peas. You'll start to see, so you just want it to move more. So we'll go ahead and put the lemon juice in. These aren't good cups to do this on, because what you really want to do is you want this to be turning as you're pouring. So I'm looking for a sprout-like top. We don't have one that's not going to make a mess, because otherwise it's going to be unbalanced. So let's what to do. This has, I don't like messy stuff. So this is lemon juice. And when you're doing your lemon juice, just throw the seeds in there. It's not a big deal. Then we're going to do the same. This is the tahini. It's a little thicker so it won't spill all over the place. So the calcium, the protein that you get from chickpeas is amazing. The other food processor, the Cuisinart, the Cuisinart goes like, brrr. It's louder, but it's more powerful, which is a good thing. So we're going to turn this. So that means that it's. So that's what you don't want to do too, is let it get stuck, and then your thing just blinks out. But that's not what happened. It just figured that it was going on with that. Now we're going to put our tamari in. Tamari is like a natural soy sauce. It's very low in sodium. And then we're going to go ahead and dump our chopped garlic and all of those jalapeno peppers. We're going to start out with just about a tablespoon of olive oil. The thing about raw is when you're using jalapeno peppers and olive oil and tamari, you really can't use too much of that. You can use as much olive oil as you want, as much jalapeno and garlic, and the more flavor you're going to end up having. I'm going to go ahead and throw, this is my favorite, cilantro. If you have some parsley, you can use that. You always want to use at least one green herb, but cilantro is my absolute favorite. You can use basil, you can use a little oregano, but cilantro tends to give it a really nice flavor. Because the tahini, if you don't get it seasoned with enough seasoning, it's going to be a little bitter. So you can put olives in here if you like. That is just way too slow for me. Obviously, see, I have no patience. I'm a good instructor. I have no patience with this food processing. And that's because I'm spoiled. I've used Cuisinart all my life, especially when they used to weigh 25 pounds. And when they came out with those little plastic things, it was just what. And so it depends on whether or not you want your hummus to be on the smooth side. Notice that you can add, and I have water and it's coffee because I also have some essential lemon oil in here as well as some wild orange, so that's just going to add some more flavor to it. So your hummus can be very smooth or it can be chunky, you know. And it depends on what you're going to be using it for. So you can use hummus like a mayonnaise if you like. You can use it as, like I said earlier, a dip. I don't know if I missed a step or something in terms of just setting this thing up. It just doesn't make sense that it's moving that. So we made some raw carrot bread a couple of days ago. So when you make raw bread, what you want to do is after it's come off of the dehydrator, you let it sit for a couple of hours and then you wrap it in paper towel and then you put it into a brown bag and it will stay fresh for at least 3 weeks or so. So this was carrot bread made with carrot pulp, grinded flax seeds, grinded sunflower seeds. I put some cranberries in there just because I didn't want to put any honey. I wanted to use something sweet, so I used cranberries. It has steel cut oats grounded down to flour, olive oil. It's really good when you have sun-dried tomatoes. I didn't have any sun-dried tomatoes, so something like this. You have raw bread, and you can just dip some hummus. This is a little watery than I would like it to be, and so the way that you can rectify that is not pouring all the water in there that I did, or you can come back and add something. You can add some grounded flax seeds to it. You can add some grounded sunflower seeds or some whole sunflower seeds. There are a lot of things you can do to siphon it, but once I put it into a container and I refrigerate it, tomorrow when I take it out, it's going to be better, but this is just fine in and of itself. That's like perfect. I was going to say it needs a little bit more of this or that, and I was going to show you that you can take another piece of jalapeno pepper. If it was going to taste bitter, more like a raw chickpea, then you can add a little bit of lemon. Don't typically do anything to enhance the flavor by adding more olive oil at this stage. Once it's liquefied like this, you just, you start looking to see, do I need a little bit more acid or do I need a little bit more sweet? So do you add a little bit more sea salt, a little bit more tamari? That's like perfect. And that will stay good in the refrigerator, fresh, for at least 10, 15 days. Raw food, the thing about it is that the longer it sits, it begins to almost become like a kefir, like it ferments on its own. So the longer it tastes. In fact, raw food typically is never eaten immediately after it's prepared. It tastes 100% better the following day. But it tastes great anyway. I mean, you definitely can eat it after you prepare something. Hummus is going to give you energy. Definitely will give you that extra protein. But it also just gives you a kick. You can use it as a salad dressing on your salad. There are a ton of things that you can do with it. As a wise student, you'll take this information, you'll go Google interesting things that you can do with raw hummus, and you'll find some more things. You can go out in your garden, pull a couple of garlic leaves, and just put the hummus in there, and then, like I said, you can add some shredded carrots or your other favorite vegetable, celery, and just make a wrap out of it. It's got a fabulous flavor to it, taste. Think of all the great things you're giving your body. Olive oil is going to lubricate your joints, keep you from being so stiff. Lemon's a natural laxative. Believe it or not, it's going to help push some of that stuff around in your system. Anytime we're using herbs, fresh cilantro, parsley, whatever the case may be, it just has a ton of medicinal properties. Green foods clean the blood. And do you realize that I put an entire 2 chunks of garlic cloves in here, chopped up, along with the jalapeno peppers, which again I've said to you many times in the past, never de-seed your peppers, because a lot of the medicinal properties for peppers are in the seeds, and peppers in general, jalapeno peppers, red peppers, or sweet peppers, the regular green and red large peppers are just, they have healing virtues to it. So you just can't go wrong with that. So that's my wisdom that I'm imparting to you today. I hope this has been helpful. We will see you in 2 weeks. Take care of yourself.